I'm a huge Pokemon fan, and am super excited for Pokemon Sword and Shield to drop for the Nintendo Switch later this year. However, as a huge Pokemon fan, I've come to develop a number of expectations for the newest games in the series, and time again, Game Freak fails to deliver in a lot of these areas. I feel as though the audience of people who play Pokemon has matured for the most part, and as the Pokemon games continue to be cranked out, either we as an audience are getting smarter, or the games themselves are getting easier. It's an inverse relationship that leaves longtime fans of the series, like myself, often frustrated with the opportunities that Game Freak passes up. Now, I'm not one of those people who will develop super unrealistic expectations, like, let us go to all the regions, or give every fully evolved Pokemon a Mega Evolution. But throughout the years, Game Freak has introduced a number of concepts that they've either discontinued or just completely ignored and have never done again. I've always questioned as to why Game Freak would improve the game one generation, just to take away that improvement in the next generation. It's mind-boggling to me. And I understand that they want to give each generation something unique about it, but a lot of the time their effort to leave a feature unique to a specific generation or game doesn't make any sense. So, I have a few wishes and expectations for features in Pokemon Sword and Shield, and most of these features are things that have already been introduced previously or should have been included in the series a long time ago. So, without further ado, here are my expectations for Pokemon Sword and Shield. So, Pokemon has always pretty much had a day and night system, ever since Generation 2, with the exception of Generation 3 for some reason. And in some of the generations, being 2, 4, and 7, different Pokemon would appear in different areas based on the time of day. The day-night cycle has always run in the background of Pokemon games, but only contributes minor aesthetic changes in the later games, such as Black and White and X and Y. I want Sword and Shield to bring back the ability for encounters and encounter rates to change based on the time of day the player's playing the game. I think that with over 800 Pokemon, Game Freak should reintroduce this feature and add a little more diversity to the Pokemon found in areas based on time of day. The seasons were only around for one generation, that being Generation 5. And while most people feel indifferent or even negatively about them, I thought the slight changes in encounter rates, scenery, and music did wonders to make the world feel a bit more alive and real. With the graphical capabilities of the Switch, I think it would be an injustice to not include the seasons. I even feel as though the more Pokemon diversity each area has, the better, and combining things like seasons and the day-night cycle could really make some specific circumstances where certain Pokemon are able to be caught. Imagine if you could only find a Pokemon like Bergmite at nighttime during winter on a certain route, or a Sunflora during the daytime in the summer on another route. This makes catching certain Pokemon even more of a challenge, as well as increases the diversity of Pokemon found in the game. There's a lot of opportunity to squeeze in Pokemon who may not necessarily be found under normal circumstances. Also, route to route, I think that weather should be more variable, with areas being able to have rain, hail, sun, or sand either more often or at all. Since Generation 4, there's been no way to rematch basic trainers. Generation 3 introduced the Versus Seeker, which would let us rematch trainers an infinite number of times, and let us grind up our Pokemon as much as we wanted. Generation 4 also had the Versus Seeker, and in the cases of Ruby and Sapphire and Heart Gold and Soul Silver, the Pokemon devices such as the Pokénav and Pokégear were able to facilitate these rematches. In each game since, there have only been a handful of trainers that you're able to rematch, and if you're trying to effectively grind up your Pokemon, sometimes wild battles simply don't cut it. I don't see any harm in having previously encountered NPC trainers get stronger as the game progresses, and being able to go back and rematch trainers would add some real liveliness to the Pokemon world, and make it feel less like a one-time campaign. In Black and White 2, after defeating the champion, you're given keys that unlock difficulties for future playthroughs of the game. What surprises me is that this is the only instance that a Pokemon game has ever had a difficulty setting, as basic as a feature as it may seem. And I'm surprised that once it was introduced, it was taken out in the next generation. I praise Black and White 2 for being a total improvement of the Unova region, and some of the best content Game Freak has ever offered us, and the addition of a difficulty setting helps put it over the top. If Sword and Shield were to introduce this easy mode and challenge mode features from the get-go, no doubt it would appeal to longtime hardcore Pokemon fans, as well as casual gamers alike. I mean, how hard could it possibly be to up the level curve just a bit and give some trainer Pokemon better moves or IVs? It seems to me that any one Game Freak employee would very easily be able to go through the base game and tweak it to make it slightly harder and more accommodating towards experienced players. It still baffles me how this feature hasn't been included since its introduction, and this is one of the few things that I really feel is going to be necessary in the future for Pokemon to keep its older audience engaged. Now we're getting to the big ones that should have been implemented a long time ago. So, since Generation 4, the only addition to an evolutionary line has been Sylveon. This means that besides this one exception, there hasn't been any sort of new or branched evolution to existing Pokemon for almost 13 years. Pokemon like Magmortar, Politoed, Mismagius, Kingdra, and Blossom are all appreciated additions to Pokemon families and serve to keep the Pokemon world changing and connected. When a generation does nothing but introduce Pokemon that have no connection back toward previous generations, they feel like one-hit wonders. I think it's super important for Game Freak to take the chance to look at their already existing Pokemon and see how they can expand their evolutionary families instead of constantly cranking out new ones. And for the love of everything, if you're going to continue putting Mega Evolutions in the game, at least create some new ones. You can check out my video on Game Freak potentially giving up on Mega Evolution in the description below, or maybe it's in the recommendeds, I don't know. So, you have all these wonderful scenic battle backgrounds that you see throughout the main game, and you think to yourself, wouldn't it be great to see that background again? Well, in Generation 6 and 7, Pokemon hasn't let you select any sort of unique battle background, instead having only one cyber-like one you're allowed to play on. Sure, there are ways you can hack the game to play on these other battlefields, but that's just it. You shouldn't have to hack the game to have a choice about where to battle. There are so many wonderful backgrounds that have existed in Pokemon, and having them exist as one-offs is a huge waste of potential. It wouldn't be that hard to have a feature where you could select your preferred battle background. This one is super obvious, and with the graphical capabilities on the Switch, I expect there to be gorgeous battle backgrounds, which hopefully can be also used online. In X and Y and Sun and Moon, certain weaker Pokemon have been given stat boosts to keep up with the power creep Pokemon has been experiencing since its introduction. Whether it was a 10-point buff to attack to a Pokemon like Unfezant, or a 20-point buff to both speed and special attack to a Pokemon like Masquerain, this new trend of improving Pokemon is one that I hope to see continue in Sword and Shield. If a Pokemon isn't going to get an evolution or a Mega Evolution, then they have to be improved at least a little bit to keep up with the times. I think that Game Freak has done a great job with this specific feature, and I think that they'll probably continue to do this, but it's still something I want to see more of. I have to mention that because Sword and Shield are going to be on the Nintendo Switch, that the online features are now going to have to be paid for with Nintendo Switch Online. I hope that because they're now charging a price for online, that the system and connectivity is improved and options are better. No doubt, certain people are going to get Switch Online solely for Pokemon, so in order to create a good experience for those people, adding in more options as far as battle backgrounds and music is going to be very important. I also hope friending features and trading features are used to the fullest extent that they can be. I'm not too worried about how they'll use online, I'm only worried that they won't use it to the fullest extent that they can, as this is a major perk of moving from being a handheld game to a console game. Lastly, one of the most important things for me is the reintroduction of a complete national Pokédex. Pokemon's trademark phrase is gotta catch 'em all, but what's the point of trying to catch 'em all if only half of them will show up in the Pokédex? There are around 400 entries missing from Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, and the only Pokédex that exists is the Alola Pokédex, which covers the 4 islands in the game. Sure, that makes it easier to complete the Pokédex now, but what's really the harm in having a Pokédex that includes them all? I feel like there was no particular reason the National Dex was scrapped in Alola, but when you can ride a Charizard to fly from place to place, but can't register it in your Pokédex, you know there's a problem. Sword and Shield better bring back the National Dex, because with this increased connectivity and better online features, trading and sharing Pokemon is going to be more prevalent than ever before. Pokemon Sword and Shield should be aiming to usher in a new standard for Pokemon games for the future. And with that, thank you all for watching. If you agree or disagree with any of the points mentioned, let me know in the comments below. And if you'd like to hit that subscribe bell or leave me a like if you enjoy the video, that would be awesome. Till next time.